everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line. I'm your host, Lauren Kalil. Our show is brought to you by Whoop. May is Sleep Mania month, and we're competing with our friends from Talking Elite Fitness, the Buttery Bros, and CrossFit Mayhem to see which team gets the highest sleep score. We're all going to be bringing you sleep tips throughout the month, and Whoop is even giving out prizes to the top sleep scorers on each team. Check out the description below to join our team, or you can sign up to get a free strap and extra month membership with our link. On today's episode, we're discussing how to improve judging with online qualifiers. And here to chat about the topic are two folks that recently wrote pieces for Morning Chalk Up surrounding the topic. We have our very own Patrick Clark, and then one of our other writers this time, Gretchen Kittelberger. How are you guys today?
I'm good.
Good. I cannot provide any tips on sleep, by the way.
Yeah, I think that you only had like 3 hours of sleep last night.
Yep, I did. But yeah, it shows. I know it shows.
People are going to be gunning for me. I think I got 10 last night. So
Wow.
I'm here to provide all of the great sleep tips. But that's for another show. Today, I think that this is such a great topic. I know internally we've been talking about it so much. We've seen so many people in our community talking about judging this year just because of how many different standards and expectations we've seen. Patrick, I'll start with you. Your original piece, it really focused on putting the accountability on the judges. As an experienced judge yourself, you had 7 different tips on how judges can do better, but why do you think that the improvement should start specifically with those judges?
Because that's where any judging starts, is at that affiliate level. That's how I learned. I started judging at the open, and I realized I had a knack for it, and I started developing my judging techniques and best practices, because there really wasn't a handbook. You're really not taught how to judge until you get to a live event, and that's when, I had a mentor like the Chuck Carswell, the Adrian Bosmans, the Eric O'Connors when I went to regionals, and other experienced judges that would give me tips. And yeah, I mean, that's why it's key that starts at that. For me, it starts at that lower level, at the affiliate, because those people are going to move on to become judges, because judging is a volunteer thing. um the judges come and go. A lot of the judges that I started off with that mentored me, they're no longer there anymore, because the wear and tear, the volunteering, after a while it gets to them, it becomes expensive, and they have lives as well. So it's, you got to keep on recycling those judges through. So, and it starts at the affiliate, the lowest level. It starts with the open.
Gretchen, on the other hand, with accountability, you think that it should be further up the chain coming from the sports organization. You pointed out 3 basic things that could be successful, including specific rules and standards being enforced, opportunities to practice enforcing these rules and standards, and even getting feedback on how well that's actually being done. Do you think that these are tangible goals that HQ could provide, and how so?
I mean, yeah, I think they are tangible goals. And I think it also has to be said, to Patrick's point, it really does start with the internal integrity, right? Without that, then there's no baseline and there's nowhere to start, right? If you have someone who's not going to have that sort of intrinsic, internal, ethical standard, then there's nowhere to go. But yeah, I think these are things that HQ definitely could implement. I think that there's a lot to that if we talk about what their role is. And I think this is a deeper conversation beyond judging, but HQ is not just here to be a sports governing body, and does not exist to be a sports governing body at all. They're trying to grow the CrossFit methodology. They're trying to grow the affiliates. Getting people in gyms. Sports governance isn't necessarily their area of expertise, nor is it supposed to be. So we do have to have this conversation with that in mind when we're saying, well, we want CrossFit to do, or any, a sports governing body to do all these things. Maybe we're asking for it from the wrong person. But beyond that, rules and standards, that is maybe the easiest one to implement, to be honest. We've done it at the IF3 level in terms of, and we're very standardized in terms of number of tests per competition, categories, of what the tests have to contain, type of things. But then in terms of movement standards, I don't want to say it wasn't that hard, because it was an incredible task to write, all the standards down, and it took a long time. And we had a whole team of people, who really put a lot of effort into that. But it's doable easily. And if you look at, our movement standards that are on our IF3 website, we've really created this kind of standardized language, even so that when we're talking about positions, right, starting and ending positions, we've created words that we can start to use this language and these commonalities to make things easier for judges. So that part, right, is maybe the easiest one. When we get to talking about developing, opportunities for practice in terms of education to teach the judges, that kind of stuff, then we have to have the conversation that kind of Patrick brought up, the volunteerism, right? Can we really expect the judges to pay to be educated, right? To go to courses, to pay for material, whatever it is, if they're doing this on a volunteer level? So that's really where the crux of that conversation and the feasibility of it is the volunteer question, right? That's what we have to tackle for that one. The feedback is, I think also more feasible, because that's, it's fairly easy. All right, we created 5 standards. We're going to rate each one on 1 through 5, and you're going to get a number at the end of your event. And, some comments from either the head judge, or we've got 2 or 3 people who sat there and watched all weekend and wrote notes about everybody. And we put it in a database, right? That's fairly easy to implement. Where we have kind of one that we have created at the IF3 level that we're working on implementing it for this year, because we're going into live in-person evaluations in order for people to get credentials. So that one is more easily implemented than maybe an educational course. And then, what you can do with that is kind of unlimited in a way, right? Maybe it's just personal feedback for that judge. Maybe it becomes a ranking system where we average scores over a bunch of different events, and like an Uber ranking, right? How many stars do you have?
Yeah.
And then you can see, like, here's the top rated judge in the country. Oh, I want to ask these people to go to my events. And you as a judge can work to increase your ranking by going to more events and getting better feedback. There's a ton of things to talk about, the pros and cons of that kind of a ranking system of, your rankers have to be good and honest and all of that, and everyone has to understand and be using the same system. But it's a really cool concept, and it's not that hard, right, to implement.
Well, Gretchen, I agree, Gretchen. It's not hard to implement because CrossFit has some of those items that you talked about in place. They're just missing that guidebook, the implementation, the tools to do that, like you said, because they do have experienced judges and level 1 staff that can do that can rank them. Because if all the major sports, they have a ranking system in place for a lot of their referees and officials, umpires. They have that in place. So why not start doing that stuff now?
Yeah.
I'm curious though, because, the way that I look at judging, I take the judges course every single year. It's a requirement for any of the staff at my affiliate to take the judges course, especially before the Open. I wonder if CrossFit, offered the judges course the way that they do offer the L1. I know that it's a little more of a financial commitment from people, but if affiliates then have the expectation that their judges, or I'm sorry, their staff, their coaches have to go take it, it's just part of your ongoing curriculum, education, etc., then that could then trickle down to maybe other members in the affiliates. What are your guys' thoughts on something like that?
Well, for most major competitions, one of the requirements to become a volunteer judge is to have, and this is where the terminology, you have to at least attended an L1 seminar, class. Doesn't say you have to pass. A lot of them just say you have to attended one. It doesn't mean if you let your L1 expire, L2 expire, doesn't mean there's no governance in terms of enforcing that. I do believe, and I truly believe this, an L1 is vital to be a judge, because you get to learn more about the movement. Because that's what the L1 is. It's understanding the major movements, the methodology. And then the judges course, for me, I always look at the judges course as a refresher of my L1 every time I take it. But I think that's in place already. It's just a matter of them actually enforcing it more, making it more of a requirement that not only you're L1, but you take some additional classes on top of just the judges course.
Yeah, I think additional classes is key because I know, so it's been a long time since I took my L1. I think I took it in 2010, but I know when I walked out, I was amped. I was so excited, but did I really understand anything? Definitely not.
No.
Like I didn't know how to see movement or see faults or all of that stuff. So I think the idea of additional courses, additional work, additional education, practice, like it's so vital. And then we run into that problem I said before. These are volunteers, right? So how do we, I think really a key is, how do you solve that problem, right? And we're not going to solve it for everybody in the open because there's no way, at the online qualifier level, we're paying all these judges. But at some level, there has to be something where we have something that's a bit more professionalized. And I would say, okay, and maybe that's where it is. If you want to qualify to the next stage, you have to use a judge who's had this additional education. I still don't think a payment thing ever happens on the online qualifier level. I mean, I just don't think that's possible, but I think it needs to be, that conversation needs to happen for the live events to really elevate kind of that, the level of judging there. But if I don't want to change the topic entirely, but if we're looking at the way we're using our online events right now, right? We're essentially saying, if we pretend the CrossFit Games is equal to the Olympics, right? And Olympic trials is semifinals, we're using an online event to qualify athletes to the Olympic trials, where they can essentially be judged by their coach or their boyfriend and their best friend or whatever in their own gym who's never been trained. Right? You usually can't just show up at the Olympic trials coming to only practicing, right, at your practice facility. So I think we do need to somehow figure out, what do we do for this top tier who is qualifying to these very important events from an online qualifier, and how do we rectify that?
Well, I think that's another topic of discussion. I have ideas about it, but again, we could go on days about that. But I agree. I mean, it has to be something can be done at the lower level. It's just going to take a little bit more effort, and it's going to take cooperation, not just from the individuals taking the course, but the affiliate owners. I think that's where it kind of starts, is the affiliates. I mean, CrossFit prides itself on the affiliates, so hand a little bit more responsibility to the affiliates. And if an affiliate messes up, then, or if they do really well in terms of training judges, or you reward them. If they don't do such a good job, you don't necessarily punish them, but you kind of give them like a heads up that, hey, do better. If you need additional help training judges, then we'll send one of our L1 seminar staff to kind of maybe do something for you at the cost of that affiliate, if they really want to do it.
And I do think it's so great because both of you and so many other people in the community have these great ideas, and it's generating positive conversation, like criticism to CrossFit about making judging better, or even Patrick, as you were saying, the affiliates. It's not a bad thing. It's just going to make the sport more professional, and it's good that we're talking about it. Patrick, I'll start with you. What is your bottom line to improving judging?
Kind of like what I said in my story, just personal accountability. If you're going to waste the money and the time to take the course, take some pride in doing it. And then when you go out there and judge, take some pride in judging. As a judge, I take pride every time I get to judge somebody, and I take it seriously because I know that I've learned a lot, and I want to pass that wisdom on, and I owe it to the sport. I owe it to my community. So just a little bit more accountability. And who knows, you might end up liking it. And if you do, you might end up in a position where you're on the floor at the games judging some of these athletes.
Sure. Gretchen, what's your bottom line?
I think it comes down to really putting our judges in a better position. We need to give them resources, and we need to give them time to practice and be in the best position that they are. And that comes down to, that's the responsibility of our sports governing bodies and our sports organizations.
Gretchen and PC, thank you guys so much for talking to us about the topic. Thank you for the articles that you wrote that are generating this conversation. And hopefully we just continue to move the sport forward, and eventually have some things actually put in place to better our judges and athletes.